Hi everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot, as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The bonfire crackled, its incandescent light painting the faces of the gathered pack with shifting, phantom-like visages. Ilara stood centered in the clearing, the intense heat causing her skin to prickle, while a cold premonition settled deep in her marrow. This night marked a turning point. This night, her destiny became entwined with Corwin's, unalterably. Anticipation thrummed in the air. The resinous fragrance of pine and rich earth mingled with the sharp, feral tang of aroused wolf senses. All gazes locked on her and Corwin as he advanced, a figure of raw power and assuredness. Usually alight with cocky bravado, his dark eyes now burned with a possessive fire, making Ilara recoil inwardly. His touch, as he reached for her, sent a strange tremor through her, a discord of fear and something dangerously close to aversion. "Tonight," Corwin's voice resonated, amplified by the hushed expectancy. Ilara Meadowlight becomes one with the Stoneclaw. She becomes mine. A wave of cheers crashed around them, vibrating through the earth. Ilara summoned a smile, her facial muscles protesting with the effort. She felt the immense weight of their expectations, the pressure to perfectly embody the Alpha's mate, resilient, supportive, utterly his. Corwin's grip tightened as he produced a silver knife. The blade flashed in the firelight, mirroring the turmoil roiling in Ilara's gut. This was the precipice. No turning back. With fluid precision, he sliced his palm, the dark blood welling, thick and vital. Turning to Ilara, his gaze locked with hers, an intensity bordering on fanaticism. "For our pack," he declared, his voice roughened. "For our future." He pressed his bleeding palm to her nape, just beneath her ear. A searing brand blazed across her flesh, an excruciating agony. She gasped, the sound swallowed by the renewed roar of the pack. The metallic taste of blood flooded her senses, mingling with Corwin's heady musk, a scent that should have been a comfort, yet felt like closing bars. As the pain receded, a new sensation unfolded, a profound connection to Corwin, a bond forged in blood and primal energy. She could feel his dominance flowing through her, asserting control. The sensation was dizzying, intoxicating, yet beneath it lay a stark sense of forfeiture, of something sacred being ripped away. Her eyes flickered to the periphery of the clearing, seeking. There, in the penumbra created by the ancient oaks, he stood Bram. His face was a study in restraint, an opaque mask. Though half hidden, she knew he was watching. His silver eyes, usually pools of warmth and understanding, were frigid, distant. A tsunami of guilt threatened to buckle her knees. Bram, the object of her abiding love, the wolf who had nurtured her through adolescence, offering guidance and protection. The wolf whose mere touch sent tremors of longing through her very core. The wolf who had stolen a kiss under the crimson moon, a kiss etched into her memory, a secret burden and a desperate hope intertwined. He had never spoken of it again, retreating behind a fortress of stoicism, burying his emotions beneath layers of duty and fealty to the pack, to Corwin. And she, driven by her own sense of obligation, had allowed him to. Now, as Corwin's mark burned into her, she questioned her path. Was duty a suitable trade for her heart? Was the pack's stability worth a lifetime of unfulfilled longing? The celebration surged around her, a raucous symphony of joyous howls and celebratory consumption. But Ilara felt profoundly isolated, imprisoned within a gilded cage of her own construction. Corwin drew her close, his arm tightening possessively around her waist. He lowered his head, his breath caressing her ear. "You're mine now, Ilara," he murmured, his voice thick with conquest. "Completely mine." She manufactured another smile, nodding mechanically. Her gaze darted back to Bram, still cloaked in shadow, a solitary figure consumed by the darkness. Their eyes met for a fleeting instant, and in that connection, she witnessed something that shattered her, not anger, not resentment, but a deep, unbearable sorrow. Then, he turned and vanished into the woods. The hours bled by, each moment a renewed torment. She danced with Corwin, enduring his possessive embraces, his whispered promises. She consumed the ceremonial meal, the food tasting like ash on her tongue. She endured the endless toasts, each word a stark reminder of her new role, her new fate. Later, as the festivities began to subside, Ilara stole away, seeking respite in the forest's tranquility. She found herself drawn to the moonlit glade where Bram had stolen that fateful kiss. The memory was palpable, so vivid she could almost feel his lips on hers, the heat of his breath, the electric current that had surged between them. She sank to her knees, the cool earth grounding her. Tears streamed silently down her face. "Bram," she whispered, her voice thick with anguish. "What have I done?" The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying her words away into the night. There was no reply, only the haunting echo of her own despair. Meanwhile, Bram stood atop the highest peak overlooking the Packlands. The wind clawed at his fur, carrying the scent of the bonfire, the scent of revelry, the scent of Ilara, now irrevocably entwined with Corwin's. His jaw tightened, a muscle spasming in his cheek. He had witnessed the marking from afar, each agonizing moment a knife twisting in his heart. He had anticipated this day. He had attempted to entomb his emotions so deeply they could never claw their way back to the surface. But witnessing Ilara branded, seeing her bound to another, had ripped open a wound he believed had long since healed. He shut his eyes, remembering the stolen kiss under the crimson moon. It had been a moment of weakness, a brief lapse in his iron control. He had known then it was forbidden, impossible. He was the beta, the second, sworn to serve and safeguard the Alpha and the Pack. Ilara was destined to be Corwin's mate, the future Luna. He had fulfilled his duty, suppressing his desires, pushing her away for her own sake, for the benefit of all. But now, standing alone on the precipice, he questioned his choices. Was duty truly worth sacrificing his happiness, her happiness? He understood Corwin's nature, his recklessness, his arrogance, the insecurity lurking beneath his bravado. He feared Corwin's possessiveness would suffocate Ilara, that his ambition would endanger the Pack. He feared she would never find genuine contentment with him. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a primal sound of frustration and despair. He yearned to protect her, to shield her from the encroaching shadows he perceived on the horizon. But he was powerless, shackled by his oath, by his loyalty. He opened his eyes, gazing out at the vast expanse of the territory. The moon bathed the landscape in silver, highlighting every detail. He could feel the life force of the Pack, the collective energy that bound them together. He was an intrinsic part of that, an essential component. He could not abandon them, not even for Ilara. He would continue to serve, to protect, to guide. He would be the bulwark against Corwin's rashness, the voice of reason amidst his ambition. He would be the silent guardian, watching over Ilara from afar, even if it sentenced him to a lifetime of unrequited love. Yet tonight, as her scent mingled with the wind, he allowed himself a fleeting moment of vulnerability, a moment of sorrow. He allowed the tears to fall freely, a silent tribute to the love he could never possess. He allowed the wolf within him to howl at the moon, a mournful cry that echoed through the night, a lament for a love lost, a future denied. Ilara's veins still hummed with the residue of the forced bond, each pulse a stark reminder of Corwin's claim. His power, raw and absolute, had imprinted itself upon her, body and spirit. Yet, beneath this forceful assertion, a faint echo persisted, the ghost of a gentler touch, a deeper connection. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the intrusion of Bram's image, luminous under the carmine wash of the blood moon, his argent eyes mirroring her own forbidden yearnings. The air, sharp with a metallic tang, almost stung her tongue, and she could practically feel the cool caress of the night breeze whispering through the silver-leaf trees bordering the training grounds. That night had been an anomaly, the pack's customary drills replaced by an eerie calm, a palpable expectancy. Bram, both instructor and protector, had dismissed the others early, citing individual assessments. But when his gaze landed on her, the usual Flint had softened, replaced by something indefinable. "Ilara," he'd rumbled, his voice a vibration against her bones. "Your progress is remarkable. Discipline, power yet." He hesitated, his hand hovering near her cheek before recoiling. "Something restrains you. A block." She'd met his gaze, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, the blood moon painting elongated, distorted shadows that danced like restless phantoms. "I don't understand," she'd breathed, her voice barely audible against the soughing leaves. He'd closed the distance between them, the scent of pine and damp earth clinging to him like a second skin, intoxicating her senses. "You fight with your head, Ilara, not your soul. You're holding back, afraid to unleash your true potential." Again his hand rose, his fingertips now tracing the curve of her cheek, a feather-light touch that ignited a chain reaction of shivers. "What are you afraid of?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. She'd feared so many things. Letting down her pack, disappointing her family, revealing the volatile power coiled within her. Yet, in that instant, locked in Bram's gaze, she understood her deepest fear. It was him. The feelings he sparked, forbidden and perilous, terrified her. She opened her mouth to answer, to deny the truth shimmering between them, but the words snagged in her throat. Then, leaned in, his lips barely grazing hers, a hesitant, tentative exploration that unleashed a torrent within her. A kiss born of longing and desperation, a silent confession of impossible desires. The world fractured, leaving only Ba. The sensation of his lips, the taste of him, the sheer, breathtaking impossibility. The memory seared, a brand upon her soul. Ilara pressed her hands to her throbbing temples, attempting to force the memory back into the shadows of her mind. It was dangerous. A betrayal of her duty, a torment threatening to shatter the fragile equilibrium she craved. Corwin was her alpha, her bondmate. Her allegiance belonged to him, to the pack. Bram was irrelevant. He had to be. She surged from the bed, the silken sheets pooling around her ankles. The alpha's chambers were opulent, vast, yet utterly confining. Each element, from the intricate carvings on the furniture to the weighty velvet drapes, proclaimed Corwin's core. Dominion. She craved air, space. a moment of freedom from the oppressive weight of her new reality. She slipped from the room, navigating the silent corridors of the pack house, her bare feet whispering against the polished wood. The air outside was invigorating calf and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, a familiar salve to her spirit. Her steps led her to the river, a sanctuary of solace, a haven she had often sought. The river flowed silently beneath the stoic trees, its surface a shimmering expanse of liquid moonlight. Ilara sank to the bank, drawing her knees to her chest, her gaze lost in the swirling current. The water mirrored her inner tempest, a maelstrom of longing, guilt, and resignation. She recalled Bram's expression after the kiss, the haunted depths of his eyes as he pulled back. Wordless, he had simply turned and vanished into the forest's embrace. He had never spoken of it since. Had it been meaningless to him? Merely a fleeting weakness? A fissure in his iron control? She didn't know, and perhaps she never would. A twig snapped behind her, jolting her senses. She knew every sound of the forest, every rustle and chirp. This was different, deliberate. Turning slowly, her heart hammered against her ribs. Bram stood a few feet away, a silhouette against the moonlit backdrop. In the darkness, his presence was even more imposing, radiating a quiet power that both drew and intimidated her. He remained silent, watching her with those piercing silver craw eyes. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words, unfulfilled desires, and the burden of their shared secret. Ilara held her breath, anticipating him to break the stillness, to speak. Yet, he remained stoic, a silent guardian, eternally beyond her reach. The river continued its hushed journey, carrying its secrets to the sea. Gifts and promises, pine needles, and the enticing fragrance of honey cakes roused Ilara. Corwin, framed by the dawn, light filtering through the window, held a breakfast tray. The gold embroidery on his midnight blue tunic winked in the sun, mirroring the self-assured grin plastered on his face. "Awake, my Luna?" he announced, his voice a resonant boom that filled the chamber. "I trust you found rest?" Ilara pushed herself up, drawing the heavy furs around her. "Adequate," she managed, her voice betraying her unease. The honey cakes offered a tempting aroma, a cruel contrast to the apprehensive flutter in her stomach. Setting the tray on the table, Corwin closed the distance between them, his gaze intense. He offered her a cake. "A proper start to our bonded life, wouldn't you, Ka? Agree? A toast to our shared future." The honey glazed her fingers as she accepted the treat. A meager smile was all she could muster. His hawkish gaze never left her as she ate. "I have a surprise planned for after breakfast. A token for this new beginning." A fleeting, indecipherable expression shadowed his features. "Something befitting you." Each bite of the cake felt like swallowing gravel. The unspoken surprise felt like another chain forged to bind her to Corwin's expectations. She yearned for simpler times. Before the blood moon's ascent, before the binding, before the vast chasm had opened between her allegiance and her secret desires. Later, Corwin escorted her to the pack's treasury, a vast, echoing space usually reserved for sacred rituals and the safekeeping of priceless relics. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows across a massive tapestry depicting the Stoneclaw Pack's history. At its heart resided a stout, intricately carved wooden chest, emblazoned with symbols of power and prosperity. "For you," Corwin proclaimed with a sweeping gesture. He threw open the chest, unleashing a glittering torrent of jewels. Necklaces of opalescent moonstone, painstakingly crafted silver bracelets, rings flashing with fire opals. Resting upon this hoard was a gown of sumptuous silk, dyed the deep emerald shade of her eyes. Ilara could only gape. It was a fortune fit for a queen, a demonstration of immense wealth and control. Instead of delight, a wave of nausea crested within her. "Corwin, this is excessive," she whispered, her voice barely audible. A frown creased his brow. "Excessive? Ilara, you are my mate, the Luna of Stoneclaw. Only the finest will do." He lifted a moonstone necklace, the stones radiating a cool light. He reached out to clasp it around her neck, his fingertips grazing her skin. Ilara recoiled almost imperceptibly. "I don't require these things," she insisted, her voice gaining strength. "I value your regard, your fidelity, far more than—" Baubles. His expression hardened in response. "Esteem and loyalty must be cultivated, Ilara. These are tangible representations of my devotion, my pledge to care for you." He secured the clasp, the chilled moonstones settling against her throat. "Wear them. Let them serve as a declaration of your worth to the pack." Turning abruptly, his shoulders stiff, he continued, "Tonight, at the feast, we will formally announce our bonding. I wish you to wear the green gown. It will proclaim to all that you are mine." Ilara watched him depart, feeling the weight of the moonstone necklace, a crushing burden upon her. She felt trapped, suffocated by his generosity and the obligations he imposed. The jewels felt less like tokens of affection and more like the gilded bars of a prison. That afternoon, Ilara discovered Lyra near the training alcove grounds, engaged in a vigorous sword practice. Lyra was a blur of motion, her silver hair whipped by the wind as she met an unseen foe with relentless precision. Hesitantly, Ilara approached. Lyra possessed an uncanny ability to discern her emotions, a skill that she was loath to deal with in that moment. She knew Lyra would glimpse the truth within her eyes, the internal discord she desperately attempted to conceal. "Lyra," she called softly. Lyra ceased her practice, lowering her blade. Her usually sparkling eyes reflected concern. "Ilara, what ails you? You look as if you've seen a banshee." Ilara trudged towards her, her footsteps heavy. "Corwin presented me with gifts," she explained, gesturing to the moonstone necklace at her throat. "Jewels, a gown, all the trappings a Luna might desire." Lyra arched a brow. "And? Sounds like a fine start. He seeks to demonstrate his affections. It feels constricting," Ilara confessed, her voice trembling. "As if he's attempting to purchase my loyalty." Lyra's gaze softened as she scrutinized Ilara's face. "He feels insecure, Ilara. He knows regarding Bram." Ilara gasped. "He knows?" Lyra shrugged. "He suspects. Everyone surmises. The way Bram regards you, it lacks subtlety." Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. "And Corwin, what course will he take?" "He will strive to keep you close," Lyra stated bluntly. "He will inundate you with care, trinkets, promises. He'll maneuver to make you forget all about Bram." "But I cannot," Ilara whispered, the words barely audible. "I have no desire to." Lyra placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch firm and reassuring. "Then you must tread with extreme caution, Ilara. Corwin is no fool. He will not brook any perceived betrayal." She paused, her gaze hardening. "And Bram, he will shield you." but he will not imperil the pack. He will pursue what he deems righteous, even if it shatters his heart. Ilara squeezed her eyes shut, tears stinging. She stood trapped between two powerful men, each driven by their own desires and agendas. And she, the Alpha's mate, the Luna of the Stoneclaw Pack, felt powerless to alter her destiny. The weight of her responsibility, her clandestine affections, and the ever-present threat of Corwin's jealousy bore down upon her, stifling her with each breath. The gifts had transformed into less than tokens of affection, and more like the gilded bars of a cage. The training grounds throbbed with exertion. Werewolves clashed, guttural snarls ripping through the cool morning as muscle met muscle. Ilara fought to stay upright against a relentless opponent. Strength wasn't her forte. She favored litheness and tactics. Yet today, her thoughts churned like a storm, her body uncooperative. Corwin's silent observation felt like a physical burden. Every falter, every near fall, seemed to reflect badly on him, on his choice of a mate. She attempted a leg sweep, but the other wolf anticipated her, dodging and landing a brutal strike to her side. Air expelled from her lungs in a whoosh as she stumbled. A surge of vexation threatened to overwhelm her. Focus was paramount, silencing the cacophony and her mate's unwavering stare. But the task proved impossible. The whispers seemed amplified today, buzzing anxieties about her status, her perceived shortcomings. Then a voice sliced through the din. "Ilara, reset. You're telegraphing your attacks." Bram, his voice, a calm, grounding force. Meeting his gaze across the field, she saw in his deep forest eyes an understanding that seemed to see straight through her defenses. He wasn't seeing the Alpha's mate, just Ilara. A nod, a deep breath, and she returned to her stance. Torin, a hulking brute of a wolf, grinned, sensing weakness. Bram moved closer, emanating a contained force that hushed the surrounding noise. He halted respectfully, his attention laser-focused. "Your footing is too wide," he murmured, the words meant only for her. "It compromises your stability. Narrow your stance. Lean forward slightly." Adjusting, she felt the subtle correction to her center of balance. Steadiness bloomed within her. "Better," she acknowledged, almost silently. "Now, when you sweep, channel your energy. Don't merely think of it, embody it. Let it erupt from your core," he demonstrated. A flowing dance of controlled ferocity, a blur of power. Ilara watched, captivated, the memory of his touch beneath the crimson moon flaring within her. A touch she desperately tried to bury, now burning with renewed intensity. "Again," Bram commanded, drawing her back to reality. She nodded, anchoring herself to his instructions, his guidance. This time, the sweep felt different, driven, potent. Torin, caught off guard, faltered, offering her an opening. Capitalizing, she unleashed a swift kick, sending him sprawling. A low murmur swept through the onlookers. Ilara stood, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through her. She'd succeeded. Bram's gaze locked with hers. A fleeting spark of something akin to pride flickered there. "Good," he stated, his voice impassive. "But sustain the momentum. Don't allow him to recover." "Yes, Bram," she whispered. The air crackled between them, thick with unspoken desires, regrets. From the edge of the grounds, Corwin's expression hardened. He witnessed the connection, the intuitive rapport between Ilara and Bram. He saw the way her gaze clung to Bram, the way she absorbed every syllable. A cold fury began to ignite within him. Gareth Ironhide, ever loyal, stood at his side, brow furrowed. She appears transformed when Bram instructs her. Alpha, he noted, his voice measured. Corwin scoffed, focused on impressing him, no doubt. His grip tightened on his sword hilt. Bram is a competent trainer, nothing more. Yet doubt festered, a venomous seed taking root. Ilara and Bram continued their practice, a silent ballet of instruction and response. Each parry, each block, each strike, executed with honed precision, yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Ilara felt drawn to Bram's quiet strength, his unwavering commitment to the pack, the very qualities Corwin seemed to lack. During a brief recess, Ilara found herself alone with Bram near the forest's edge. The arena's clamor muted, replaced by rustling leaves and avian melodies. She drew in a deep breath, seeking to regulate her pounding heart. "Thank you," she murmured, barely audible. Turning, Bram's expression was inscrutable. "You possess potential, Ilara. You must simply have faith in yourself." Their gazes met, and for an instant, the world dissolved. Ilara glimpsed a shadow of longing in Bram's eyes, a mirror of her own secret desires. The memory of their illicit kiss under the blood moon surged back, as vivid and electrifying as before. "Bramhay," she began, her voice trembling on the edge. He took a step closer, his hand rising as if to reach for her, then faltering, caught between duty and temptation. "Ilara," he breathed, his voice a rough rasp. The moment stretched, suspended, the unspoken words hanging heavy. Then a twig snapped, shattering the fragile enchantment. Gareth emerged from the trees, a worried expression etched on his face. "Ilara, the Alpha seeks you," he announced, his gaze darting between them with suspicion. Bram retreated, his expression shuddering. "I was merely offering Ilara supplementary instruction, Gareth," he stated, his tone carefully neutral. Gareth gave a slow nod, his eyes remaining narrowed. "Of course," he replied, but skepticism dripped from his voice. Ilara's heart plummeted. She knew Gareth would report to Corwin, fanning the flames of jealousy. The walls were closing in, trapping her between obligation and yearning, between being the Alpha's mate and the wolf she genuinely loved. As she returned to the training grounds, Ilara glanced back at Bram. He stood motionless, watching her, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored her own. Their stolen moments were escalating in danger, each lingering look, each whispered word, edging them closer to the precipice. But she was powerless to resist. She was drawn to him like a moth to a flame, knowing it would ultimately lead to her destruction. Whispers in the wind, typically. The pack hall resonated with the inviting scent of roasting venison, a fragrant promise of the evening feast. But tonight, the familiar aroma seemed muted, failing to dispel a disquiet that vibrated beneath the revelry. A cluster of wolves huddled near the fire pit, their voices a low murmur, their gazes flicking nervously toward the dais where Ilara sat rigidly beside Corwin. "She seems withdrawn," observed Lyra, her kind face etched with worry. Lyra, ever gentle, embodied the pack's unwavering devotion. "Almost distant. Small wonder," Gareth rumbled, the seasoned warrior's gruff exterior barely concealing a keen mind. "Corwin's been rather overbearing, suffocating even. Did you see his glower directed at Bram during training? Enough to make anyone uneasy." "She is the Alpha's chosen," countered Maya, a note of censure coloring her voice. She should exude pride, offer support, not animosity. Animosity? Witness her expression when Corwin outlined the revised patrol routes. Gareth countered with a scoff. She looked as though she'd rather be anywhere else. The murmurs persisted, a subtle undercurrent of conjecture and judgment that seemed to resonate within the very timbers of the hall. Ilara's coolness toward Corwin became the subject of scrutiny, her forced smiles, the perpetual searching quality in her eyes. Bram, too, was a focus, his quiet strength, his unflinching gaze, the unspoken connection that sparked between him and Ilara whenever their paths crossed. Ilara remained cows, impassive, her spine straight as a drawn bow, focusing intently on the charred root vegetables adorning her plate. The pack's usual cacophony, a comforting sound of unity, now felt like a crushing weight, each syllable a tiny sting. She sensed their collective gaze, dissecting her every gesture, scrutinizing her every glance. The savory flavors turned to dust in her mouth as she listlessly toyed with her dinner. Snippets of conversation drifted her way. Obligation, Alpha's prerogative, disappointment, inciting a wave of nausea. She yearned to vanish, to flee the suffocating scrutiny and seek solace in the forest's embrace. Then, her name drifted through the air. Ilara Sime's changed, not quite herself, especially since. The voice faded, but the unspoken conclusion hung heavy in the air. The training session with Bram. Her heart constricted. She risked a glance at Corwin, who was regaling a knot of warriors with a boisterous tale, his laughter echoing through the hall. He appeared oblivious to her distress, or perhaps indifferent to it. She abandoned her meal, her appetite extinguished. The whispers swelled, enveloping her like a stifling cloud. Air. She needed air, space, release from the oppressive weight of their disapproval. Rising abruptly, she mumbled an excuse, her voice barely audible. I need to step outside." Corwin's laughter ceased, his eyes narrowing imperceptibly. "Are you quite well, Ilara?" Though he feigned concern, she detected an underlying current of suspicion. "Yes, I simply need to walk," she replied, avoiding his gaze. Without awaiting his reply, she turned and fled the hall, the whispers nipping at her heels. Outside, the cool night air offered temporary liberation. She hastened her pace, barely registering the ground beneath her paws, until she arrived at the forest's edge. Leaning against an ancient oak, she closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, attempting to quell her racing heart. The wind whispered through the canopy, carrying the distant sounds of the pack laughter, music, the steady pulse of their communal life. Yet tonight, even those familiar sounds felt foreign, tainted by the murmurs that had soured the atmosphere. Corwin emerged from the pack hall, his imposing form outlined by the glowing doorway. He surveyed the clearing, his eyes searching. Spotting her leaning against the oak, a flicker of annoyance crossed his features. He approached deliberately, his expression veiled. "Ilara," he began softly, his voice devoid of its earlier joviality. "What troubles you?" She hesitated, uncertain how to articulate her unease. I simply needed some air," she repeated, her gaze averted. He closed the distance between them, his presence exuding power and ownership. Gently, he framed her face with his hands, compelling her to meet his gaze. "The pack is gossiping," he said, his voice low and menacing. "They say you are unhappy." She recoiled at his words, her heart pounding erratically. "They are mistaken," she breathed, attempting to convince herself as much as him. He scrutinized her eyes, his gaze intense and unwavering. "Are they truly?" Before she could respond, he released her and turned away, his shoulders stiff with anger. He stalked back toward the pack hall, his footfalls heavy and resolute. Later, as the pack convened around the nightly bonfire, Corwin addressed them, his voice resonating across the clearing. "There have been rumors circulating," he announced, his eyes sweeping over the gathered wolves. "Rumors of discontent, of discord amongst our ranks." He paused, allowing his words to take root. "I wish to assure you that such rumors are baseless. Ilara is my mate, my chosen companion, and she enjoys my complete support and trust." He turned toward Ilara, who stood beside him, her face ashen. He drew her close, his arm possessively encircling her waist. "We are united, resolute, and unwavering in our commitment to this pack." The pack erupted in cheers, their anxieties seemingly alleviated by Corwin's assured pronouncements. Yet, as Ilara scanned the faces of her packmates, she observed lingering doubt in their gazes, whispers still lingering on their tongues. And she knew, with a sinking feeling, that Corwin's words were merely a temporary bulwark against the rising tide of suspicion. He might publicly dismiss the gossip, but deep within his heart, doubt had taken root. And that doubt, she feared, would prove far more perilous than any whisper carried on the wind. Forest confessions, the forest enveloped Ilara, a cool compress against the tightening knot of anxiety that had become her constant shadow. Sunbeams, fractured by the dense canopy, danced on the forest floor as she walked, her feet sinking into the yielding earth. She sought refuge among the ancient trees, their unyielding stillness a sharp contrast to the ceaseless chatter and veiled glances within the pack's territory. The air, redolent with pine and earthen musk, offered a respite from the Alpha's chambers, heavy with cloying perfumes. Corwin's scent, once a source of comfort, now felt like an unwelcome intrusion. Each rustle and crack underfoot amplified the inner storm. His protectiveness had ossified into a gilded prison, a cage nonetheless. His public declaration of unity, intended to quell the unrest, had only exacerbated the rift between them. She felt manipulated, her autonomy diminished, compelled to play a role that felt increasingly foreign. Reaching the creek, its waters a shimmering thread weaving through the undergrowth, she paused. Kneeling, she cupped her hands and drank deeply, the icy shock clearing her thoughts, however briefly. The reflection that greeted her was unfamiliar. Her eyes lacked their usual fire, her spirit dulled. Where was the girl who had reveled in the wilderness, the huntress who ran with untamed abandon? A nearby snap shattered the stillness. Ilara's head jerked up, instincts ablaze. This wasn't the clumsy movement of a deer or rabbit. The sound was deliberate, measured. Her pulse quickened. Bram emerged from a thicket, his presence a double-edged sword relief, warring with apprehension. He was a creature of shadow, his dark hair mirroring the forest's depths, his gaze, normally guarded, now brimming with an intensity that stole her breath. He appeared drawn, the lines around his eyes deepened by sleeplessness and unspoken burdens. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low rasp that resonated through her. No greeting, no pleasantries. The air vibrated with unspoken feelings, years of pent-up longing. "Bram," she echoed, barely audible. She yearned to flee into his embrace, to rediscover the solace of his presence. Yet she remained rooted to the spot, the invisible chains binding her to Corwin an inescapable reminder of her obligations. He closed the gap between them, his movements deliberate, until only a few feet separated them. His scent, earthy and grounding, swamped her senses, a welcome antidote to the Alpha's suffocating musk. "I needed to see you." Her gaze fell to the ground, unable to meet his burning stare. "You shouldn't be here. If Corwin were to find us, to hell with Corwin. Bram retorted, his voice roughened with contained fury. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek, as if hesitant to intrude. I can't stand by and watch him extinguish you, Ilara. You're withering under his possessiveness. At last, she met his gaze, the raw emotion within stealing her breath. It was a volatile blend of desire, frustration, and fierce protectiveness that resonated deep within her. I made a choice, Bram. A choice forced upon you, he countered, his voice softening. Don't pretend this is what you wanted, Ilara. I know you too well. The tooth of his words pierced her carefully constructed defenses. She had desperately tried to believe she could adapt, become the mate Corwin required, the Luna the pack deserved. But the facade was crumbling, the weight of her unhappiness unbearable. What choice did I have? She asked, her voice brittle with despair. He's the Alpha. It was my duty. Bram stepped closer, his hand finally making contact, cupping her face, his thumb gently tracing the curve of her cheekbone. The simple touch reverberated through her, stirring a dormant longing that threatened to consume her. Duty shouldn't demand your joy, Ilara, or sacrifice your spirit. His gaze locked with hers, penetrating her carefully constructed barriers, exposing the truth she desperately tried to conceal. I can't do this, Bram. I can't maintain this pretense. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken desires and impossible possibilities. The forest held its breath, as if anticipating the shattering of a long-held secret. Then Bram spoke, his voice a fervent whisper that echoed through the trees. I love you, Ilara. The words hung suspended in the air, heavy with years of suppressed emotion. The admission, so long held back, unleashed a wave of feelings that threatened to drown her. She gasped, her heart thundering in her chest. I shouldn't be saying this, he continued, his grip firming on her cheek. But I can't contain it any longer. I've loved you since you were a pup, tearing through these woods. I watched you blossom into the strong, compassionate woman you've become, and my love has only deepened. I know you're bound to Corwin, but my heart refuses to accept it. You deserve so much more than he offers. Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, blurring her vision. Deep down, she had always known of Bram's feelings. She saw it in his unwavering gaze, the subtle gestures of protection. But hearing the words spoken aloud, having her own hidden truth reflected back at her, was overwhelming. Brahma. She choked, her voice thick with unshed tears. He silenced her with a tender gesture, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. Don't say anything, Ilara. Just let me tell you what I need to say. I can't offer you an easy life, or the power that comes with being the Alpha's mate, but I can offer you my devotion, my unwavering protection, and a love that will never diminish. I will keep you safe, always. Tears streamed down her face, a torrent of joy, sorrow, and profound guilt. She loved Bram. She had loved him for as long as she could remember. But her bond with Corwin, her duty to the pack, was an oppressive weight, threatening to crush her. I don't know what to say, she stammered, her voice trembling. Bram gently wiped away her tears, his gaze filled with a tenderness that made her ache. You don't need to say anything. Just know that I'm here for you, always. Whatever you need, whatever you decide, I will stand by you. He leaned in, his lips hovering just above hers. The temptation was almost unbearable. She closed her eyes, her body trembling with anticipation. Ilara, he breathed, his warm breath caressing her skin. Tell me to stop, and I will. But if you don't. She didn't. She couldn't bring herself to. The pull was too strong, the longing too profound. And then his lips met hers, a soft, hesitant exploration that ignited a wildfire within her. It was a kiss born of yearning, desperation, and years of denied desire finally given voice. She surrendered to his embrace, her arms circling his neck, her fingers weaving through his hair. The world dissolved, leaving only them, suspended in a moment of forbidden ecstasy. Caught in the shadows, the forest was hushed, thick with the earthy aroma of damp soil and evergreens. Ilara leaned against the gnarled oak, its bark a rough counterpoint to the burgeoning tenderness within her. Bram stood bathed in the silver wash of the waning moon, his features sharpened by the light. Love had poured from his lips, a mirror to the emotion she'd guarded so fiercely. The space between them vibrated with unspoken needs, a culmination of years brought to a head. "Bram," she breathed, the sound lost to the whisper of leaves. "I can't. I belong to Corwin." A tick pulsed in Bram's clenched jaw, a silent testament to his inner conflict. Marked, Ilara, not cherished. I see his possessive gaze, the way he parades you like a trophy. He doesn't truly see you. His dark eyes burned into hers. But I do. Her resolve frayed. She yearned to succumb, to give in to the magnetism that had always pulled them together. A force she'd long resisted, but the weight of obligation, her bond to Corwin, held her captive. A sacred vow bound her, not just to him, but to the entire pack. Hidden amongst the trees, eyes blazed, driven by a nagging disquiet since the unity ceremony, Corwin had trailed Ilara. He'd sensed a change, a subtle distancing that had left him unmoored. He told himself he sought to ensure her safety, yet but dark suspicion gnawed at him, twisting in his stomach like poison ivy. He followed her trail, guided by the delicate fragrance of meadowsweet and moonlight that clung to her, until he reached the clearing's edge. The tableau that unfolded ignited a primitive, white-hot rage within him. Bram, his beta, the wolf he trusted above all, stood intimately close to Ilara, their faces highlighted by the deceptive moonlight. Corwin's breath caught, his fists clenched, nails biting into his flesh. He had heard the murmurs, the veiled allusions to Ilara and Bram's deep connection. He had dismissed them as petty jealousy. Now, his worst fears materialized before him. Ilara reached out, her hand hovering hesitantly. Bram's fingers rose to meet hers, a fleeting brush against her skin. A simple touch, yet pregnant with unspoken promise, with years of stifled longing. A profound connection that transcended duty. A roar threatened to erupt from Corwin, a tempest of possessiveness poised to break free. He wanted to surge into the clearing, to rip them apart, to remind them of his authority, the consequences of transgression. But something restrained him. A flicker of reason, perhaps, or fear of what he might discover if he confronted them. Instead, he remained cloaked in shadow, consumed by his jealousy. Corwin observed the raw emotion flickering across Ilara's features. The carefully constructed mask momentarily dropped. He saw a genuine spark, something he knew he could never ignite. "I can't," Ilara repeated, regret coloring her voice. "I made my choice." Bram's hand stilled. He searched her face, his expression a blend of anguish and understanding. "The choice of your heart, Ilara? Or one forced upon you?" Corwin ground his teeth. He longed to silence Bram, to obliterate the words that eroded Ilara's defenses. He wanted to seize her, to sequester her away, beyond the reach of prying eyes, possessive touches. Ilara recoiled, severing their connection. She averted her gaze, unable to meet Bram's intense scrutiny. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "I'm the Alpha's mate. That's all that matters." Bram's shoulders slumped, defeated. He knew he could not compel her to forsake her duty, to jeopardize everything for a love considered taboo. Yet, the pain etched on his face mirrored the torment within him. Corwin watched Bram vanish into the undergrowth. Only when he was certain Bram was gone did he emerge. Ilara gasped, startled. "Corwin! What are you doing here?" He advanced, his eyes narrowed, his face a rigid mask of barely suppressed fury. "A question I should be asking you, Ilara." His tone was low, laced with menace. She straightened, meeting his gaze with forced defiance. "I was walking. I needed air. And did your walk yield satisfactory results, Ilara?" He pressed, sarcasm dripping from his voice. She hesitated, her eyes flickering. "I don't know what you mean." Corwin chuckled, the sound grating. "Spare me the innocent act, Ilara. I witnessed it." The way you looked at him, his gaze upon you, that tender exchange. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to deny, to explain, but the words were trapped. The truth hung between them, an oppressive weight. "He's my beta," she finally whispered. "He's a friend." Corwin's eyes blazed. "A friend? Is that what you term it? A clandestine rendezvous under the cloak of night? Stolen glances? Forbidden touches?" He stalked closer, his presence suffocating. Ilara retreated, her heart hammering. She had never seen him like this, consumed by raw, unbridled anger, devoid of the charm he habitually projected. "I would never," she began, but Corwin silenced her. "Don't insult me, Ilara," he snarled, his voice rising in pitch. "I saw it with my own eyes. I will not tolerate it. You are mine. You belong to me. And I will not yield you to another, least of all him." His hand shot out, clamping around her arm in a painful grip. Ilara gasped, fear flooding her. She was ensnared, trapped in the shadow of Corwin's possessiveness, her heart torn between obligation and desire, between the Alpha she was bound to and the Beta she could never possess. Demands of loyalty, the Luna chambers vibrated with unspoken conflict. Ilara stood sentinel at the vast window, the forest a hushed emerald expanse beneath the waning light. Corwin's presence loomed behind her, a palpable pressure that seemed to constrict her chest, stealing breath. The familiar woodsy aroma, normally a balm, now felt stifling, sharpened by the metallic edge of his suppressed ire. He closed the gap between them with a panther's grace, until she felt the radiating heat of his controlled power. He didn't make contact, but the sheer force of his restraint felt more menacing than a blow. "You met with Bram," he asserted, his voice a low, guttural pronouncement that resonated in the floorboards and up through her. "Not a query." Ilara pivoted, meeting his gaze squarely. The warm amber of his eyes had hardened into topaz shards, glinting with avaricious gold. "Yes, I did." She refused to yield, refused to be cowed, despite every survival instinct screaming for retreat. "And what matter was so pressing it demanded a clandestine audience?" Each syllable was meticulously carved, a careful performance of composure barely masking the seething wrath beneath. She fought to swallow past the knot forming in her throat. He voiced concerns about patrol deployments, about the border clashes with the Shadowfang contingent. A partial truth, a bulwark erected to safeguard Bram, and ultimately herself. Corwin's lips twisted into a sneer. "Concerns?" "Bram is perpetually concerned. It is intrinsic to him. But you, Ilara, are my chosen mate, my Luna. Your anxieties should be tethered to me, to our pack, to our shared horizon, not engaging in furtive rendezvous with my beta. The accusation landed like a stone, oppressive and airless. That's unjust, Corwin. Bram's integrity is beyond reproach. He'd never... Integrity? Corwin discharged a harsh, brittle laugh that sent a tremor down her spine. Integrity is a convenient disguise, Ilara, masking a multitude of transgressions. Relate to me the substance of your conversation. Did he weave honeyed words? Did he evoke simpler days? She winced, a rush of remembered moments, shared training sessions, hushed confidences, a stolen kiss under a crimson moon flooding back. He said nothing untoward. Untoward? Is that your euphemism? Meeting in secret, sharing anxieties? Do you presume me blind, Ilara? Do you think I'm oblivious to his gaze upon you? To your... reciprocation? His voice escalated with each word, the carefully maintained veneer of control cracking, revealing the raw, untamed jealousy that consumed him. Corwin, you misinterpret. There's nothing between Bram and me. She abhorred the lie, loathed its ashen taste, but it was imperative, for Bram's security, for the good of the collective. He advanced, breaching her space, his eyes boring into hers. Do not prevaricate with me. Ilara, I consented upon you. The fragrance of your deception, the faint ghost of his yearning. You are mine, branded, bound. Your allegiance is to me. I made this choice, Corwin. I elected to be your mate. The utterance reverberated emptily, even to her own ears. Did you? He canted his head, his gaze penetrating. Or did you succumb to obligation? Did you choose expectation over the heart's true desire? Did you select what was demanded, not what truly resonated within? She remained mute, unable to voice the truth a dangerous serpent coiled within, poised to strike. Corwin's hand rose, his fingertips tracing her cheek in a possessive caress that felt more like a fiery seal. I crave your unwavering allegiance, Ilara. Not mere performance of duty, not simply the fulfillment of vows. I desire your heart, your devotion, your genuine longing. I do desire you, Corwin. She strove to imbue her voice with truth, but it emerged brittle, a desperate entreaty instead of sincere affirmation. He probed her expression, his own inscrutable. Demonstrate it. How? The word escaped before she could restrain it, a mere breath lost in the thickening stillness. Sever all contact. Utterly. No more secret conclaves. No more hushed exchanges. No more lingering looks. He is my beta, and you are my Luna. Maintain distance. Show me, show the pack, that your fealty resides with me. An impossible demand, a cruel test designed to shatter her. Bram was more than just an officer. He was her friend, her confidant, the solitary soul who truly saw her. To sever that connection would be akin to excising a piece of herself. Corwin, that's not just. Bram is vital to this pack. He's your most trusted. You rely on him. She entreated, striving for middle ground, a means to appease him without forfeiting all she valued. Your loyalty is paramount. His tone was frigid, relentless. And should you fail to provide it, then I shall be compelled to reevaluate everything. Our bond, our destiny, your standing as Luna. The threat lingered, sharp and venomous. He was challenging her, driving her to the edge, forcing a choice between affection and obligation, between the man who held her heart and the community she had pledged to safeguard. I require time, Corwin, she stammered, clinging to the forlorn hope of navigating this impossible predicament. Time? He barked another humorless laugh. Time is a commodity we lack, Ilara. The Shadowfang pack displays ever-increasing audacity. The pack necessitates a resolute Luna, a unified front. I must possess the certainty of your trust, absolute and unquestioning. He retreated a step, his eyes a blend of anticipation and mistrust. I grant you until the next full moon. Until that juncture, affirm your dedication to me. Prove your worthiness to bear the title of Luna. He turned and departed, leaving her isolated in the encroaching darkness, the weight of his demands pressing down with unbearable force. The full moon. 14 days to choose between her heart's inclination and her pack's survival. 14 days to determine the fate of all she held dear. 14 days to resolve the question of her truest allegiance. A pack divided. It wasn't a howl that heralded Kaelin's arrival, but a stench. A putrid, biting odor. A declaration reeking of malice sliced through the morning's freshness. Ilara recognized it instantly. Darkwood. The miasma of scorched earth and simmering fury rode the wind, a palpable menace that prickled her skin. She glanced toward the training grounds, where Corwin's booming voice orchestrated the pack's drills above the thud of practice combat. Bram stood beside him, face impassive, yet Ilara sensed a sudden spike of alertness emanating from him like the heat haze above a fire. Before she could shout a warning, a chorus of howls tore through the tranquility, shattering the calm. Kaelin's pack, infamous for their savagery and avarice for territory, had come. Corwin's answering roar, a challenge and order combined, ignited pandemonium. Warriors morphed, muscles bunching, eyes ignited with predatory hunger. Ilara, too, shifted, her pelt flowing into a sleek silver coat as she assumed her wolf form, a shadow poised to defend her own. The ensuing fight was a maelstrom of fang and claw, a brutal ballet of survival and dominance. Kaelin's forces surged forward with rabid intensity, eyes glazed, snarls guttural. Ilara fought with fierce determination, her agile form a blur as she dodged and countered, striking with calculated force. Grim satisfaction surged as she felled a slavering attacker, her teeth finding purchase on his exposed flank. Through the chaos, she spotted Corwin, a force of nature, carving a path through the enemy ranks. His immense form, a vortex of ebony fur and flashing canines, delivered crushing blows with each strike. He was a magnificent alpha, exuding power and inspiring unwavering loyalty. Yet her gaze flickered to Bram. He was a picture of controlled ferocity, a study in deadly efficiency. Each movement was precise, each strike designed to disable Ka, rather than kill. He moved with a quiet, deadly grace, safeguarding the flanks and anticipating every assault. Their eyes met briefly, a silent understanding passing between them before the battle engulfed them once more. Ilara, with me. Corwin's voice knifed through the fray. He faced Kaelin, the two alphas locked in a vicious duel. Kaelin, a fearsome adversary with ambition burning in his eyes, met Corwin's strength and fury. Yet Corwin favored his left side. An injury. Snarling a challenge at Kaelin, Ilara lunged, drawing his attention from Corwin at a crucial moment. You dare interfere, she-wolf? Kaelin spat, his voice laced with scorn. You should be tending your Alpha's wounds, not fighting battles beyond your strength. I fight for my pack, Ilara retorted, defiance blazing in her eyes. And I will defend them from the likes of you. She snapped at his throat, forcing him to parry her attack. Suddenly, Bram materialized, a silent guardian at her side. Together, they formed an impenetrable barrier, deflecting Kaelin's onslaught and granting Corwin a reprieve. Alpha, Beta, and Luna fought as one, a unified front against a common foe. But amid the shared struggle, the tension between them thrummed, a silent current threatening to crack their alliance. Further afield, Lyra Swiftfoot and Gareth Ironhide defended the borders with unyielding dedication. Lyra, quick as a viper, weaved through the trees, harassing the enemy's sides with swift, stinging strikes. Gareth, a mountain of muscle and fur, stood firm, a bulwark against any who dared trespass. "They're pushing us back," Lyra hissed, frustration tightening her voice. "We need reinforcements on the south flank. Corwin ordered us to hold the line." Gareth rumbled, his eyes narrowed. "We can't abandon our post." "Orders be damned," Lyra snapped. "If the border falls, they'll outflank us and overrun the lands. We have to act now." Without waiting for Gareth's consent, she darted toward the 7 perimeter, a blur of motion through the trees. Gareth hesitated, torn between loyalty and duty. With a frustrated snarl, he lumbered after her, his massive form thrashing through the undergrowth. Back at the heart of the conflict, Kaelin roared in defeat, his attacks now fueled by desperation. He knew he was losing ground. Corwin, refreshed, unleashed a torrent of fury. Bram and Ilara formed an unyielding defense, predicting his every move, neutralizing every attack. "This isn't over, Stoneclaw," Kaelin spat, hatred contorting his features. "I'll return, and next time I'll take everything from you." With a final, frustrated snarl, he turned and fled, his remaining warriors scattering in his wake. As Kaelin's rabble dispersed, an uneasy calm descended upon the ravaged ground. The air hung thick with the reek of blood and musk, the forest floor marred by the fallen. Corwin, chest heaving, surveyed the scene, tallying the damage. He cut the figure of a Kerber. Victorious Alpha. But Ilara saw the exhaustion etched in his features, the fatigue beneath his proud mask. "Bram, tend to the wounded," Corwin rasped, his voice raw. "Ilara, come with me. We must address the pack's defenses." Ilara followed Corwin toward the lodge, her heart weighed down. The skirmish was won, but the greater war loomed ahead, and as she walked beside her Alpha, she couldn't dispel the certainty that the true threat to the pack wasn't Kaelin Darkwood, but the unspoken longings simmering beneath the surface of their own. A pack fractured, not by external forces, but by a forbidden desire threatening to unravel them all. Sacrifice and resentment, the air still vibrated with the echoes of Kaelin's failed attack, acrid with the scent of spilled blood and lingering decay. Ilara, her senses screaming, scanned the perimeter, pulse still frantic. Though victorious, a shadow of unease clung to her, fueled not just by the brutal clash, but by the palpable darkness radiating from Corwin, a grim aura that seemed a part of Tura. Him. Dismissing it for now, she focused on the survivor's needs. Wounds to bind, patrols to dispatch, the fallen to remember. A bestial growl, raw and threatening, shattered the fragile quiet. Ilara spun, instincts blazing. A solitary Kaelin wolf, grotesquely oversized, erupted from the undergrowth, eyes gleaming with savage hunger. It moved with startling speed, a gray-furred missile of snapping jaws. Barely registering the danger, Ilara shifted, claws springing, ready to defend herself. But the beast was too quick, too powerful. It slammed into her, stealing her breath. She hit the earth hard, her bones protesting the impact. The Kaelin pinned her, its crushing weight stealing her breath, its rancid breath scorching her face. Panic bloomed, icy and sharp. She scrabbled at its coarse fur, desperate to break free. Her efforts futile. Its jaws yawned open, a grotesque display of yellowed fangs poised to end her. This was it. A resigned chill settled over her. Her life, entwined with duty and yearning, would end ignominiously here, upon the crimson earth. Another casualty of this unwanted war. Then, a streak of russet fur, a roar of unbridled rage, and the suffocating pressure lifted. Bram. He'd arrived like a tempest, a force of raw power unleashed. He launched himself at the Kaelin, sending it flying. The two wolves became a whirlwind of teeth and fury, their snarls and growls echoing through the clearing. Ilara, struggling for air, crawled back, her body aching, her mind reeling. She watched, mesmerized, as Bram fought with a ferocity she'd never imagined. He moved with savage elegance, his attacks precise and lethal. The Kaelin, for all its brute strength, was no match for Bram's skill and relentless drive. With a final, brutal clamp of his jaws, Bram ended the beast's life. He stood over the corpse, chest heaving, a feral fire burning in his eyes. Then he turned towards Ilara, his expression softening, his gaze laced with a concern that resonated deep within her. "Ilara?" he breathed, his voice rough with raw emotion. "Are you hurt?" She could only nod, her throat tight with a tangled knot of terror and gratitude. He had saved her. Once more, "Thank you, Bram," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. He closed the distance between them, his hand reaching out to cradle her cheek. His touch was gentle, a striking contrast to the brutal violence of moments before. "I will always protect you, Ilara," he murmured, his gaze locked on hers. The words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken longing, a vow that both thrilled and terrified her. A low snarl, sharp with possessive fury, shattered the fragile intimacy. Corwin. He stood a short distance away, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. His gaze darted between Ilara and Bram, a storm gathering in their depths. The air thrummed with unspoken accusations. A silent battle waged between the two alphas. "Ilara," Corwin's voice cut through the air, dangerously controlled. "Come here." Ilara hesitated, torn between her allegiance to her mate and the undeniable magnetic pull she felt towards Bram. She glanced at Bram, a silent plea in her eyes. He returned her gaze, his expression impassive. He understood what she had to do. With a heavy heart, she turned and walked toward Corwin. As she neared him, she could feel the heat emanating from his body, the barely suppressed rage simmering beneath the surface. He seized her arm, his grip tight, claiming. "Are you injured?" he demanded, his voice sharp as shattered glass. "I'm all right," she replied, striving for composure. He didn't believe her. He could detect Bram on her, the lingering trace of his protection, his solicitude. Bram was only fulfilling his duty, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm, guarding the Alpha's consort. Ilara winced at his words, knowing he aimed to wound. "He saved my life, Corwin," she countered, her voice gaining steel. "Should gratitude be withheld?" "Grateful, by all means," he snarled, his grip tightening. On her arm. "But not indebted." He drew her close, his eyes boring into hers. "You belong to me, Ilara. Never forget that." The words branded her, searing her skin, suffocating her with their possessive weight. She glanced back at Bram, who remained silent, his face an unreadable mask of stoicism. He knew, she realized. He knew she was trapped, bound to Corwin by duty and obligation, while her heart yearned for another. Resentment festered within Corwin like a bell. Corrosive poison, twisting the love that once blossomed there. He registered the silent exchange between Ilara and Bram, the unspoken desire that danced between them like a shared secret. He knew he could never truly claim Ilara's heart, that a part of her would forever belong to Bram. And the knowledge fueled his jealousy, warping him into a creature cray, unrecognizable to himself. As dusk painted the sky in hues of crimson and violet, casting elongated shadows across the bloodied ground, Ilara found herself caught between the two men she loved, entangled in a web of duty, desire, and deceit. The conflict with Kaelin might be concluded, but the war within their pack had only just begun. And as darkness deepened, she understood that true sacrifices were imminent. Reckless Alpha, the reek of pine and gore, a macabre incense permeated the air, clinging to Ilara's coat. Around them, dire wolves, each a hulking nightmare beyond any she'd faced before, pressed their assault. Their eyes, embers of savage hunger, and their snarls echoed through the trees, a death dirge for their pack. Corwin, normally a whirlwind of precise violence, now fought with unrestrained abandon. His silver fur slicked crimson, his movements bordering on reckless. His roar, intended as a rallying cry, held a tremor that betrayed his insecurity. He was losing his grip. Bram, an immovable bulwark, moved with a fluid economy of motion, his dark fur melting into the shadows. Each attack was anticipated, each feint countered, his amber eyes burning with focused intensity. Ilara instinctively edged closer to him, seeking refuge in his unwavering calm amid the pandemonium. Suddenly, Corwin broke formation, a dangerous spark igniting in his golden eyes. "This ends now," he bellowed, his voice a ragged rasp, fueled by exertion and a desperate need for validation. He locked onto the monstrous Alpha, a brute with a mud-caked pelt, savaging a young warrior. Without a word, without so much as a glance at Bram or Ilara, Corwin shifted, transforming into his full wolf form magnificent, a symphony of raw power and unleashed fury. But a chill snaked down Ilara's spine. He was courting disaster. "Corwin, don't!" Bram's warning sliced through the clamor. The Corwin was already a silver blur. Hurtling toward the Alpha, he launched a frontal assault, ignoring the snapping jaws of flanking wolves. It was a display of raw, undeniable strength, yet tactically unsound. He left himself exposed, vulnerable, and pulled the enemy's focus from their defensive line. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. "He's throwing himself away," she breathed, her claws digging into the earth. She yearned to shield him from his own folly, but her duty held her fast. The pack depended on her. Bram cursed, a rare outburst that spoke volumes. "Lyra! Gareth! With me!" His command, sharp with urgency, brooked no argument. He couldn't let Corwin charge headlong into annihilation. Lyra Swiftfoot, a lithe border defender famed for her speed, hesitated for a heartbeat, her brown eyes wide with concern. Gareth Ironhide, a mountain of a warrior whose strength was matched only by his cautious nature, looked uneasy. "But the Lina," he began, his voice heavy with doubt. "The line will stand," Bram snapped, his gaze unwavering. Corwin's about to get himself slaughtered and drag half the pack down with him. Move! Lyra, ever impetuous, needed no further prompting. She surged forward, a grey streak following Bram into the fray. Gareth, after a moment's internal battle, lumbered after them, his heavy paws thudding against the ground. Ilara watched them go, dread coiling in her stomach. Corwin's impetuous charge had shattered their carefully constructed defenses, their unity fracturing under the weight of their Alpha's rash decision. The collision of Corwin and the monstrous Alpha was a sickening thud of bone and muscle. The beast was larger, more seasoned, fueled by a primal rage. Corwin fought with desperate intensity, but he was undeniably outmatched, absorbing a brutal blow that tore through his silver fur, staining it crimson. Bram and his impromptu team arrived like a thunderclap, a wave of dark fur crashing into the melee. Bram engaged the wolves surrounding Corwin, creating an opening for Lyra to exploit. She struck at the monstrous Alpha's flank. Gareth, an unyielding wall, stood guard, preventing interference. The tide began to shift, but victory remained elusive. Spurred by the intrusion, the monstrous wolves renewed their assault. The battle escalated, a chaotic ballet of fang and claw, of snarls and howls. Ilara fought with renewed ferocity, fueled by a cocktail of fear and anger. Fear for Corwin, for Bram, for the pack. Anger at Corwin for his recklessness, his pride, his blindness to his own vulnerabilities. She felled one monstrous wolf after another, her movements precise and lethal. Yet, the chilling sense of impending doom persisted. Corwin's impulsiveness had sealed their fate. Then, she saw it. A monstrous wolf, larger and more cunning, had bypassed Bram and Gareth. It was closing on Corwin, still locked in a deadly dance with the Alpha. Ilara knew her duty. She couldn't let Corwin die. Not like this. Surging with adrenaline, she abandoned her post, sprinting toward Corwin with unexpected speed. She launched herself at the attacking wolf, disrupting its attack just as its jaws were about to close. The wolf snarled, its gaze burning with feral rage. It turned its full attention to Ilara, massive jaws snapping. She was outmatched, she knew, but it was irrelevant. She would protect Corwin, even at the cost of her own life. She was the Alpha's mate, and such was her bond. However, as she braced for the inevitable, the unsettling truth emerged. Was she fighting only for duty and loyalty, or was she also fighting for Bram? Was her desperate act fueled by an unacknowledged love? The weight of that forbidden desire settled upon her, heavy and suffocating. As she prepared to face the monstrous wolf, the surrounding chaos dissolved, leaving only the threat before her and the two wolves behind her, their destinies entangled in a web of unspoken loyalties and forbidden desires. Defiance and leadership. The Alpha dire wolf, a hulking brute radiating menace, slashed forward, its fangs grazing Corwin's cheek. Ilara, her pulse a frantic drum against her ears, shoved him off balance. She gasped as displaced air stung her face where death had hovered a heartbeat before. "Corwin! Retreat!" Bram's voice, a guttural imperative, cut through the din. He was a blur of frosted fur and deadly intent, parrying the dire wolf's onslaught with savage grace. Flanking him, Lyra and Gareth moved as a single entity, a bulwark of muscle and tusk shielding the pack. Dusting himself off, Corwin shot Bram a look simmering with affront and shame. "I don't need your interference, Bram. Let me handle this." Bram remained steadfast, his focus laser-locked on the Alpha, his body a coiled menace. "Respectfully, Alpha, your impulsiveness endangers us all. We must hold fast." Rank insubordination, pure and simple. A challenge hurled in the crucible of combat. Ilara's breath hitched, anticipating Corwin's volatile response. Corwin's nostrils flared wide. "Are you questioning my command, Beta?" "I'm stating the obvious," Bram countered, his tone resolute. "The dire wolves are attempting an encirclement. Gareth, with me. Lyra, secure the eastern rise." Without awaiting sanction, Bram shifted, the sinews in his legs bunching. He exploded toward the encroaching brutes, Gareth a shadow glued to his heels. After a fraction of hesitation, Lyra diverted to reinforce the eastern border, her lean form a streak of sable against the encroaching night. Ilara watched, conflicted. Fury contorted Corwin's features, yet even he couldn't dismiss the efficacy of Bram's maneuver. The pack, initially rattled by Corwin's rash attack, was now reforming into a coordinated line, their movements purposeful under Bram's unspoken direction. "He oversteps," Corwin rumbled, his voice strangled with suppressed ire. "He forgets the chain of command." Ilara bit back a sharp retort. She understood that Bram's actions stemmed not from malice or ambition, but from an unwavering dedication to the Paka loyalty that surpassed even his obligation to Corwin. He was a guardian first, last, and always, prepared to do anything to safeguard his kin, even if it meant defying his alpha. Bram, leading the countercharge, was a force unleashed. He flowed with wild artistry, his silver coat catching the moonlight as he clashed with the dire wolves. Each blow was measured, surgical, designed to disable rather than kill. He was buying precious time, carving out space, enabling the pack to regroup and bolster their defenses. Gareth, a mountain of brawn and bone, battled with fierce intensity, his howls resonating through the trees. He was an adamantine shield, immovable and unrelenting, holding the line against the remorseless assault. Lyra, agile and quick, danced through the undergrowth, ambushing the dire wolves from concealed positions, her strikes sudden and lethal. Snapping out of her paralysis, Ilara understood that she couldn't remain a passive observer. Corwin, still incandescent with rage, but seemingly cognizant that Bram's tactic was bearing fruit, had re-entered the fray, his attacks amplified by a potent blend of anger and frustration. She had to shield them both, to guarantee the pack's survival. She shifted, her form transmuting into a lithe, potent wolf, her senses amplified, her instincts honed. She plunged into the melee, a whirlwind of ivory fur and bared fangs, targeting the dire wolves threatening Corwin and Bram. The battle raged on, a brutal ballet of survival and destruction under the impassive gaze of the moon. The air hung heavy with the reek of blood and fur, the cacophony of snarls and bone snaps echoing through the woods. But imperceptibly, steadily, the momentum began to shift. Bram's tactical brilliance, coupled with the pack's revitalized resolve, was driving the dire wolves back. The pack members, initially disheartened by Corwin's recklessness, now fought with a fervor born of desperation and a blossoming respect for Bram's leadership. They recognized in him not merely a beta, but a protector, a strategist, a leader willing to stake everything for their well-being. Ilara discerned it too. As she fought beside Bram, she felt a surge of admiration, a profound pride in the wolf he was, in the leader he was becoming. He was everything Corwin should have been, everything the pack needed. Yet, he was not the alpha. He was the beta, bound by duty and loyalty to Corwin, compelled to suppress his own aspirations for the sake of the pack. And she, Ilara, was the alpha's mate, bound to Corwin by a tie she hadn't chosen, caught between her obligation and her heart. As the dire wolves finally withdrew, melting into the shadows of the forest, A strained quiet settled over the battlefield. The pack members, battered and bloodied, clustered together, their eyes focused on Bram. He stood erect and commanding, his silver fur slick with gore, his gaze sweeping over the pack, assessing the damage, ensuring everyone was accounted for. He was a lighthouse of fortitude and resilience, a symbol of hope in the face of despair. Corwin, his face still crimson with resentment, stepped forward, his shadow eclipsing Bram. "You defied my orders, Beta." Bram met his gaze head-on, his expression unyielding. "I safeguarded the pack, Alpha." The silence stretched, thick with unspoken conflict. Ilara held her breath, braced for Corwin's reprisal. Then, faintly, a murmur rippled through the pack. A murmur of gratitude, of respect, of something bordering on veneration. They had witnessed Bram's leadership, his bravery, his unwavering dedication to their safety. They had seen him defy their Alpha, not out of spite or ambition, but out of a deep-seated loyalty to the pack. Corwin heard it too. He registered the shift in their eyes, the subtle alteration in their stance. He saw the burgeoning regard for Bram, the unvoiced question of whether he, Corwin, was genuinely deserving of leading them. His face hardened, his eyes turning glacial. He knew he couldn't chastise Bram, not after his valor, not with the pack as witnesses, but the seed of bitterness had taken root, and Ilara knew, with a sinking premonition, that it would only fester and bloom. "Tend to the injured," Corwin barked, his voice terse and emotionless. He turned and stalked off, disappearing into the gloom, leaving Bram standing alone, drenched in the pale moonlight, the unsung hero of the hour. The wounded Alpha, the coppery reek of blood saturated the air, biting at Ilara's senses. What had been a lush meadow was now a ravaged mire of churned earth and scattered fur. The dire wolves, beaten back with grievous losses, had melted into the forest's shadowed embrace. Yet triumph had extracted a heavy toll. Wails of agony drifted on the breeze. Wolves, some hobbling, others clutching injured limbs, moved with somber resolve, attending to their brethren. Ilara's frantic gaze swept the scene, her pulse hammering against her ribs until she spotted Bram. His sable fur was caked with filth as he barked commands with understated power. He moved with focused dispatch, his keen eyes assessing the wounded and directing them toward Fiona's capable paws. A knot formed in Ilara's throat as she desperately sought Corwin. He had been a tempest of fang and claw at the vanguard. Fear, sharp as ice, stabbed through her. She pushed through the throng, her voice a strained whisper. "Corwin? Where is Corwin?" A guttural growl drew her attention. A cluster of wolves surrounded a still form near the wood's edge. A wave of dread washed over her, constricting her chest. She forced her way through, her eyes widening with horror. Corwin lay motionless, his silver pelt stained crimson. A savage wound bisected his side, exposing the stark white of bone. His breath came in shallow, ragged gasps, a ghastly rattle in his chest. His eyes remained shut, his face ashen beneath the grime and gore. "Corwin!" Ilara collapsed beside him, her hands trembling as she reached for his muzzle. His skin felt clammy, unnervingly cold. "Corwin! Wake up, please!" Fiona knelt beside her, her expression bleak. "He's lost significant blood, Ilara. We must move him to the den, quickly." Bram materialized at her side, his face a mask of concern. He barked orders, his voice a steady anchor. "Two of you, onto the stretcher, gently. Fiona, stay with him. Ilara, assist me in assessing the others." Ilara hesitated, her eyes glued to Corwin's unmoving form. "I must stay with him." Bram's jaw tightened. He's in Fiona's capable hands. We require you here, Ilara. The pack needs you. His words held the weight of command, softened by a plea in his gaze. Grudgingly she nodded, suppressing the wave of panic threatening to engulf her. She knew Bram spoke the truth. As the Alpha's mate, her responsibility lay with the pack, even as her heart clamored to remain at Corwin's side. As the stretcher-bearers carefully lifted Corwin, Ilara rose, forcing her focus onto the task at hand. She moved among the injured, offering solace and aiding Bram in triaging their wounds. Her hands remained steady, her voice even, yet inwardly she was a vortex of fear and remorse. The aftermath's chaos swirled about her. Wolves barked instructions, ferried supplies, and tended to the wounded. Bram navigated the turmoil with quiet efficiency, his very presence a calming influence. He delegated tasks, offered encouragement, and made swift, decisive judgments. His leadership was undeniable, a stark contrast to the impetuosity Corwin had demonstrated during the fray. As the final wounded were conveyed to the den, Bram turned to Ilara, his gaze intense. He's stable for the moment, he said quietly. Fiona is doing her utmost. Ilara nodded, speechless. The image of Corwin, pale and lifeless, haunted her. He acted recklessly. Bram continued, his voice strained. He charged headlong without forethought, without a plan. He nearly paid the ultimate price and endangered the entire pack. His assessment was harsh, but Ilara knew it rang true. Corwin's courage often teetered on the brink of recklessness, a need to prove himself sometimes blinding him to the bigger picture. He's the Alpha, Ilara said, her voice barely audible. He was safeguarding his pack. A leader safeguards his pack by making prudent choices, not by recklessly throwing himself into harm's way, Bram countered, his eyes flashing with anger. He must learn to contemplate before he acts. Tension crackled between them, thick with unspoken words and simmering emotions. Ilara understood that Bram's frustration stemmed not solely from Corwin's leadership, but also from the bond binding her to the Alpha, a bond that kept them asunder. He is wounded, Ilara said, her voice rising slightly. Can we not address this later? Bram sighed, raking a hand through his matted fur. You speak the truth. Now is not the time. He paused, his gaze softening. Go to him, Ilara. Stay by his side. She nodded, turning to depart. Ilara, Bram called after her. She paused, turning back. Thank you, he said, his voice sincere and hushed, for all that you did out there. She managed a weak smile. We each did what was necessary. As she hastened toward the den, Ilara couldn't dispel the feeling that the battle had wrought a change. But the pack had witnessed a shift in the balance of power. Corwin's recklessness had been laid bare, while Bram's leadership had shone brightly. Inside the den, the air hung heavy with the mingled aromas of herbs and blood. Fiona was attending to Corwin, her brow furrowed in intense concentration. He remained unconscious, his breathing shallow and labored. Ilara knelt beside him, clasping his paw in hers. His skin remained cold, but she detected a faint pulse beneath her fingertips. How fares he? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Fiona glanced up, her expression weary. He is stable, but he has lost considerable blood. The wound is deep. He faces a long road to recovery. Ilara nodded, her gaze fixed upon Corwin's pallid face. A surge of conflicting emotions washed over her: fear, guilt, and a perplexing sense of responsibility. She was bound to him, not merely by duty, but by a connection that ran deeper than she wished to acknowledge. As the hours ticked by, Ilara remained by Corwin's side, watching over him, offering silent prayers for his recovery. The pack moved around her, their voices hushed, their faces etched with concern. Bram checked in intermittently, his presence a silent reassurance. As dawn painted the entrance of the den, with pale white, Corwin stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, and he groaned, his hand clenching in Ilara's. "Ilara?" he whispered, his voice weak and raspy. "I'm here," she said, squeezing his hand gently. "You are safe now." He looked around, his gaze unfocused. "The wolves, the battle. It is over," she said. "We were victorious, but you sustained an injury." His eyes widened with pain. I remember rest now," she said softly. "You must heal. He must heal." Closed his eyes, his breathing becoming more regular. Ilara continued to hold his hand, her gaze unwavering on his face. As she sat there, watching over the wounded Alpha, she realized that the pack stood at a crossroads. Corwin's injury had not only diminished him physically, but it had also exposed his imperfections, undermining his authority. The pack needed a strong leader, one who could guide them through the trials ahead. And however reluctant she was to admit it, Bram had risen to the occasion in Corwin's absence, proving himself to be the leader they required. The question that remained was, would Corwin possess the strength to accept it? And what implications would this hold for her, caught between duty and desire, bound to the Alpha, yet longing for the Beta? The battle for the pack's survival had been won, but the battle for her heart had only just begun. The prophecy revealed the forest's aroma, a blend of pine needles and moist earth, clung to Bram's thick fur as he addressed the anxious pack. His voice, usually a deep murmur, now carried the weight of command as he detailed patrol assignments and resource allocation, filling Corwin's absent shoes. Ilara, a steadfast presence at his side, scanned the assembly, her gaze a silent reassurance to the worried wolves. She favored young Lyra with a comforting nod, her brother recently wounded in a direwolf attack. The pack craved stability, a firm leader, and Bram offered it with a quiet capability that masked his inner unease. "The eastern flank will be reinforced," Bram announced, his eyes gleaming with determination in the fragmented sunlight. "Mara, your team will concentrate on setting snares. Kai, lead the hunt toward Whispering Falls. Game is abundant there. Ilara will manage the distribution of our dwindling herbal remedies. Use them sparingly. We don't know when we can replenish our reserves." Ilara stepped forward, her tone measured and calm. "Bram's directives are clear. Let's act with resolve, not trepidation. We must project strength." She briefly met Bram's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, a familiar pressure intensified by Corwin's absence and the unspoken fear that permeated the air. As the pack dispersed, Ilara approached Bram, concern etched on her face. "The stores are dangerously low, Bram. A successful hunt is paramount, and soon. The healers also fear the rapid spread of fever transmitted by the dire wolf's tainted claws." Bram sighed, raking his fingers through his dark mane. "I am aware. A second hunting party will depart tomorrow. Regarding the fever, we are doing everything possible. Rowan is preparing a potent curative, but it requires time." "Rowan, eh?" Ilara's voice trailed off, her thoughts wandering to the ancient elder. Perhaps she possesses some insight, some guidance to offer. Bram nodded slowly. "Consulting her is worth a try. However, temper your expectations, Ilara. Rowan often speaks in riddles, rarely offering a straightforward answer. Later that evening, under the long, inky fingers of the moon's shadow, Ilara and Bram approached Rowan's isolated dwelling. The atmosphere thrummed with an ethereal energy, saturated with the pungent smell of herbs and ancient lore. Rowan sat in a meditative posture upon a woven mat, her silver hair flowing down her back like liquid moonlight. Her eyes, clouded with age, seemed to pierce beyond the tangible world. "You seek counsel," Rowan croaked, her voice like the whisper of dried leaves. "The future is veiled in shadow, but the threads of fate are already entwined." Bram stepped forward, his tone respectful and measured. "The pack is vulnerable, Elder. Corwin is injured, and doubt gnaws at their spirit. We need resilience, direction." Rowan chuckled, a dry, fragile sound. "Resilience manifests in myriad ways, young Bram. Not all conflicts are resolved with tooth and claw. Sometimes true strength resides within the heart." Ilara knelt beside Bram, her gaze riveted on Rowan's ancient face. "What do you foresee, Elder? What does the future hold in store?" Rowan closed her eyes, her breathing slowing to a measured pace. "I see a tempest brewing," she murmured. "A tempest of darkness and flame. Yet, within that tempest, a beacon shines, a beacon capable of either uniting or shattering everything." Her eyes snapped open, her gaze sharp and penetrating. "An ancient prophecy exists, one whispered among elders for generations. It speaks of the Alpha's chosen. It states that the Alpha's mate must possess a genuine heart, one that perceives beyond power and ambition, a heart that resonates with the very essence of the land and its wolves." Bram frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion. "A prophecy? How does this relate to our current predicament?" Rowan smiled enigmatically. "Everything, young Bram. The Alpha's mate represents not merely dominance, but is a conduit for harmony. Their decisions, their actions, will dictate the destiny of the pack." Ilara felt a tremor of unease creep down her spine. Rowan's pronouncements resonated within her very core, igniting a sense of purpose she had never envisioned. Was she, the Alpha's mate, destined for more than just ceremonial duty? Was she capable of wielding such immense influence? "The prophecy speaks of a trial," Rowan continued, her voice gaining strength. "A trial between fealty and devotion, between responsibility and longing. The Alpha's mate must choose wisely, for their choice will determine the pack's future." Bram stood his ground, his jaw tense as granite, challenged. "Are you saying this is Ilara's cross to bear?" Rowan didn't respond to Bram but looked directly at Ilara and began. "The heart knows its own truths, and the path will reveal itself in time. Keep it pure, and be strong." Rowan closed her eyes once more, dismissing them. "Now, depart. I require rest." Returning to the main camp, Ilara remained silent, her thoughts swirling in the wake of Rowan's words. The weight of the prophecy bore down on her, adding further complexity to her already fraught emotions. Bram ended the silence, his voice hushed and strained. "Don't allow Rowan's pronouncements to burden you, Ilara. Prophecies are often ambiguous and open to interpretation. We will persevere, together." Ilara looked at him, her heart aching with a love she could never fully voice. "But what if the prophecy is true, Bram? What if my choices genuinely dictate the fate of the pack?" Bram halted, turning to face her. He reached out, gently framing her face with his hands. His eyes, usually guarded, now revealed a raw intensity that stole her breath. "Then you must choose what your heart tells you is right," he said, his voice barely audible. "Choose with conviction, Ilara." And whatever you decide, I will stand by you." His words, delivered with such resolute sincerity, filled her with both hope and despair. Hope that she could navigate this impossible dilemma, and despair that her actions would inevitably inflict pain and loss. The prophecy had illuminated a path forward, but it was a path paved with peril and uncertainty. Elara knew, with growing apprehension, that the storm was indeed gathering. Trial of the heart, the stillness of the elder's grove pressed in, broken only by the soughing of leaves in the ancient canopy. Rowan whispering tree, her countenance a tapestry of lines woven by years and insight, fixed Elara with a knowing gaze. "The foretelling speaks of a gauntlet," she declared, her voice a deep timbre that vibrated through the glade. "A crucible of the spirit, laid before the Alpha's chosen. Her decision will dictate the future of our people." Corwin, still favoring his wounded leg, fidgeted restlessly. "A gauntlet? What manner of test is this? Enemies encroach, a plague festers. We have no space for theatrics." His voice, typically a booming command, was raspy with pain and vexation. Bram stood sentinel at Elara's side, his presence a silent fortitude. Their eyes met, a spark of comprehension passing between them. He, above all, understood the storm raging within her. "It is not theatrics, Alpha," Rowan countered, her tone unwavering, though gentle. "It is vital. The sickness weakens our bodies, but doubt will unravel us. Elara must demonstrate her strength, her fealty. She must prove herself worthy to lead this pack alongside you." "And who ordains this gauntlet?" Corwin challenged, eyes narrowed to slits. "Who serves as arbiter?" Rowan's gaze shifted toward the edge of the grove, where Maeve Nightshade stood silently, veiled in shadow. Maeve, the cryptic healer, custodian of forgotten wisdom, a figure both revered and dreaded. Maeve will guide the trial. She knows the landscapes of the heart, the resilience of the soul. A collective murmur diffused through the assembled wolves. Maeve was an enigma, her intentions forever obscured. To entrust Elara's fate to her felt akin to surrendering to blind chance. Elara stepped forward, spine erect. Despite the tremor in her hands, her voice rang clear and determined. "I will face the trial." Surprise registered on Corwin's features. "Elara, no! This is preposterous. I won't permit you to be subjected to some archaic ordeal." His protectiveness, usually a balm, now felt like constraint. "I must, Corwin," she insisted, holding his gaze. "For the pack. For you. If this is what it takes to quell the suspicion, to bind us together, then I will endure it." Her gaze flickered momentarily to Bram, catching the ardent resolve blazing in her eyes. Bram then spoke, his voice a low growl that permitted no argument. "The Elder has decreed. We will honor her sagacity, and Elara will not confront this alone. I will stand with her." Corwin stiffened, his hand unconsciously moving toward the jagged scar on his flank. "You will obey orders, Bram. This is not your concern." "Everything that impacts the pack is my concern," Bram retorted, his voice a dangerous purr. The tension between the two men crackled, a silent contest for dominance threatening to ignite. Elara placed a hand on Bram's forearm, a voiceless plea for restraint. "Enough," she commanded, her voice unwavering. "We must concentrate on the task ahead." "Maeve, what does this trial encompass?" Maeve glided forward, emerging from the penumbra. Her eyes, the hue of thunderheads, held a vastness of knowledge that both captivated and unnerved Elara. "The trial is not a singular ordeal, but a series of tests, trials of might, of allegiance, of truth. She paused, her gaze encompassing the assembled wolves. Each challenge will plumb the depths of your spirit, Ilara. It will expose your innermost desires, your deepest terrors, and your decisions will dictate not just your own destiny, but the destiny of this pack. Tests? Corwin pressed, suspicion coating his words. Will she be forced to battle, to jeopardize her life? The trials are not concerned with brute strength, Alpha. Maeve responded, a trace of amusement threading her voice. They are about the fortitude of the spirit. The first trial will examine your loyalty. You will be confronted with a choice, Ilara, a choice that will force you to choose between your duty and your soul's longing. Ilara's breath hitched in her throat. Duty and longing. The very words mirrored the war raging within her. What is the choice? Bram inquired, his voice carefully modulated. Maeve's lips tilted into a subtle smile. That, Beta, is for Ilara to discover. The trial will commence at the next moonrise. Prepare yourself, Ilara Meadowlight. The fate of the pack hangs suspended on your shoulders. The import of Maeve's words descended like a shroud upon Ilara. The crucible of the spirit, a test crafted to unearth her deepest secrets, to force her to grapple with the forbidden yearnings she had suppressed for so long. She glanced at Bram, his face a canvas of worry, and a tide of despair threatened to engulf her. How could she possibly navigate this trial without exposing the truth that could devastate everything? As the pack scattered, leaving Ilara alone with Corwin and Bram, the silence returned, heavier, more oppressive than before. Corwin, his anger smoldering beneath the surface, turned to Ilara. I still don't approve of this, he said, his voice strained. I distrust Maeve, and I distrust this trial. I know, Ilara replied, her voice a whisper. But I must do this, Corwin. For the pack. He reached out and clasped her hand, his grip surprisingly tender. I'll be here for you, Ilara. I won't let anything befall you. She squeezed his hand in return, offering a wan smile. Thank you, Corwin. But her gaze strayed toward Bram, who stood silently a short distance away, his expression inscrutable. He offered a clipped nod, then pivoted and vanished into the trees, leaving Ilara feeling more isolated than ever. The crucible of the spirit had begun, and she knew, with a shiver of premonition, that it would irrevocably alter everything. A new dawn, the final trial, awaited Ilara deep within the whispering caves. No blaze, no brawn, but a mirrored surface of obsidian water presented the ultimate test. Elder Rowan, her aged face a tapestry of hard-won wisdom, stood guard, offering no solace, merely stark reality. The fiercest conflict, little wolf, rages within. What do you perceive in that reflection? Ilara knelt, the frigid stone leaching warmth from her. The mirror shimmered, revealing not her form, but the interwoven strands of her existence. Corwin's exacting presence, Bram's steadfast calm, the anxious faces of her kin, all reliant on her. I see obligation, affection, and a choice that paralyzes me. Rowan's voice, a deep thrum, vibrated through the cavern. The pool reveals potential, not present fact. Your path is obscured by your own cravings. True sight comes only with complete self-acceptance, embracing every facet of your being. Ilara inhaled deeply, drawing courage from the damp air. She glimpsed Corwin, burdened by expectation, his gaze darkening with a possessiveness that both excited and constricted. Then Bram, his unwavering support a constant haven, his rare smiles like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The pack appeared, fragmented and craving direction, needing someone to believe in. Opening her eyes, resolve hardening her features, she spoke. I see a leader who must honor her truth, even if it shatters norms. I envision a future where duty and love aren't adversaries, but allies. The reflection dissolved, then solidified, displaying only Ilara, her gaze illuminated from within. Rowan inclined her head, a fleeting smile touching her lips. The way is clear, the choice remains yours. Emerging from the caves, Ilara faced a throng of expectant eyes. Corwin was front and center, his countenance inscrutable. Behind him, Bram's anxiety was a tangible thing. Unspoken tension charged the atmosphere, the silence broken only by the sigh of wind through the trees. Corwin advanced, his voice resonating across the clearing. You've endured the trials, Ilara. Tell us, what insights have you gained? Ilara met his stare, hers unwavering. I've learned that genuine strength springs not from dominance, but from insight. Leadership isn't about control, but about service. And love cannot be coerced, only freely offered. A tick pulsed in Corwin's jaw. His gaze flicked to Bram, then back to Ilara, a glimmer of understanding flickering in his eyes. For the first time, Ilara witnessed the vulnerability beneath his alpha bravado, the fear of inadequacy. He drew a shuddering breath, his shoulders relaxing. I arrived prepared to battle for you, Ilara, to prove my worth as your alpha. But I realize now my motives were flawed. I clung to authority, to tradition, driven by the terror of losing you, of forfeiting everything. He paused, a novel humility coloring his tone. The pack requires a robust leader, someone who can unify, not divide, someone who guides with wisdom and empathy, not fear and iron rule. And that individual is not me. A collective gasp swept through the pack. Corwin relinquishing his claim was unprecedented, a seismic shift in their established order. He faced Bram, his gaze firm. Bram, you've always been the heart of this pack. Your devotion, your resilience, your unwavering commitment, it's clear you possess the qualities of a true leader. Step forward, brother. Claim what is rightfully yours. Bram remained rooted, his eyes wide with astonishment. He searched Ilara's face, a silent plea for guidance. She nodded, her heart overflowing with a love that no longer needed concealing. With a fortifying breath, Bram stepped forward, an unassuming strength emanating from him, connecting him to the land itself. He stood before the pack, his gaze encompassing them all, offering assurance and promise. I never coveted this authority, he said, his voice ringing with genuine sincerity. But I embrace it now, not for personal gain, but for the benefit of all. I vow to lead with fairness, with compassion, and with an unwavering dedication to the safety and prosperity of our pack. A resounding cheer erupted from the throng, a wave of relief and hope washing over them. The pack had found its leader, not through force or heritage, but through worth and devotion. Corwin retreated, a wistful smile gracing his features. He knew he was acting rightly, despite the ache in his soul. He offered Ilara one last glance, a silent farewell conveyed in his eyes. Then he turned and vanished into the depths of the forest, shedding the life he had always known. Bram turned to Ilara, his gaze brimming with a love that mirrored her own. He extended his hand, taking hers in his touch igniting a spark of electricity through her. Ilara, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Will you stand at my side? Will you be my Luna, my partner, my beloved? Tears streamed down Ilara's face, tears of elation. of liberation, of utter, unfiltered joy. "Yes, Bram," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, with every fiber of my being." He drew her close, their bodies melding, as though they were created for one another. He lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both tender and fervent, a pledge of a future brimming with love and optimism. The pack exploded in joyous cries, celebrating not only their new alpha, but also the love that had finally emerged into the light. Ilara and Bram stood united, hand in hand, bathed in the radiant glow of the rising sun, an emblem of a new dawn for the pack, a new epoch of harmony and flourishing, steered by a love that defied norms and embraced endurance. Radiant destiny. Elder Rowan smiled contentedly, certain that the pack was finally in capable hands, led by a love that would mend and join them as one. The era of shadows had ended, and a true dawn had broken. Legacy of the Wolves' rosa-tinged light splashed across the whispering woods as dawn broke, a fitting herald for the Silver Moon Pack's new chapter. Ilara, shoulder to shoulder with Bram, surveyed their domain from a high vantage point. A tapestry of rich valleys and dark, brooding peaks stretched to the horizon. The air, a bracing blend of pine and fertile earth, was a well-worn comfort. "It still feels like a dream," she whispered, barely audible over the wind's whisper through the trees. "Being here, like this, together." Bram turned, his usually guarded expression now open, a warmth reserved only for her. "It's real, Ilara, and it's as it should be." He reached for her hand, his touch sparking a now familiar current. Their fingers twined, a silent vow exchanged beneath the nascent sun. The mantle of leadership settled on them, a shared weight and an honor they both embraced. Activity already rippled through the pack far below, each movement precise and purposeful. Lyra Swiftfoot spearheaded a hunting foray towards the western plains, her agile form a fleeting shadow against the terrain. Dareth Ironhide commanded the strengthening of the pack's defenses, his gravelly voice echoing across the training grounds. They were adjusting, gradually, to the Alter Dashen. Hierarchy? To the void left by Corwin's tyranny and the security found in Bram's steadfast hand. Later, Bram presided at the council table, its oak surface polished smooth by the passage of generations of alphas. He listened intently as healers outlined their dwindling stock of medicinals. His brow creased in concentration. The responsibility for their well-being bore down on him. A soft rap broke his focus. Corwin entered, his customary arrogance replaced by a quiet restraint. He carried a time-worn, leather-bound volume. "Bram," Corwin began, the acerbic edge gone from his tone. "I thought this might prove useful. It holds records of past lean seasons, strategies for conserving provisions." He placed the book on the table, meeting Bram's gaze squarely. There was no lingering resentment, only quiet acquiescence. Bram inclined his head, a glint of gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Corwin." "I appreciate it." Corwin hesitated, then spoke, his voice subdued. "You know, I always equated strength with dominance, with forcing others to bend to my will. Now I understand true strength lies in service." He glanced at Bram, then at Ilara, who had entered unnoticed. "You too. You grasp that truth in a way that eluded me." Ilara stepped closer, her tone gentle. "Corwin, you still possess much to offer this pack. Your knowledge, your experience, they are invaluable." Corwin offered a faint smile. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps I can still find a way to contribute." He paused. "I've been studying maps of the old territories, the abandoned fortifications. I believe I could advise on how to secure them, bolster them against rogue incursions. Bram weighed the proposition. That would be a significant asset. Your expertise would be invaluable. Thus, an improbable alliance took shape. Corwin, the former Alpha, now an advisor, his pride tempered by humility, his envy supplanted by quiet respect. He discovered purpose in aiding others, a different kind of power, far more fulfilling than the one he previously craved. As days bled into weeks, and weeks into months, the Silver Moon Pack prospered under Bram and Ilara's combined leadership. Bram's strategic acumen and unwavering dedication, intertwined with Ilara's compassionate spirit and keen understanding of the Pack's needs, forged a harmonious equilibrium. They heeded their people, sought their insights, and governed with fairness and empathy, qualities sorely lacking in the past. Hunters returned laden with game, healers unearthed new medicinal sources, and warriors trained with renewed zeal. The Silver Moon Pack became renowned not just for their power, but for their unity and their unshakable devotion to each other. One night, under the sanguine glow of the blood moon, Ilara and Bram stood united atop their territory's highest peak. The air thrummed with palpable energy, the moon's ancient magic swirling around them. Below, the pack congregated, their resonant howls echoing through the valley, a symphony of unwavering loyalty and profound affection. Ilara leaned into Bram, her form aligning instinctively with his. She felt the steady pulse of his heart, a reassuring rhythm that anchored her. "They are content," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Bram embraced her, drawing her closer. "Because they are guided by love, Ilara." "By your love." He paused, then spoke, his voice tinged with emotion. "That night, beneath the blood moon, before your bonding, the kiss we shared," Ilara turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "I have never forgotten it, Bram." He cradled her face in his palms, his thumbs tracing the delicate contours of her cheekbones. "Nor have I. It was a moment of madness, a betrayal of my obligations. But it was also the most authentic moment of my life." He lowered his head, his lips a breath away from hers. "I love you, Ilara. More than words can capture." Ilara's breath hitched. "And I love you, Bram. Always have, always will." Their lips met, a kiss both gentle and fierce, the culmination of years of stifled desires and unvoiced yearnings. It was a kiss that cemented their bond, a promise of a future where love and duty could intertwine, where their hearts could finally find freedom. The pack below erupted in a unified chorus of howls, sensing the potent connection between their Alpha and Luna, a celebration of their union. Years cascaded by, and the tale of Ilara and Bram evolved into a legend whispered among the wolves. A story of forbidden affection, of sacrifice and redemption, of a beta who ascended to Alpha, and a Luna who chose love over convention. It was a narrative of how two wolves, intertwined by destiny, transformed a pack and ushered in a golden age of unprecedented harmony and prosperity. Children learned of Corwin's transformation, his newfound humility becoming a far greater strength than his previous arrogance. They were taught how his counsel aided in securing new lands and safeguarding the pack from external threats. They learned that leadership was not about brute force, but about devoted service, about placing the needs of the collective above personal ambitions. Ilara and Bram reigned together, their love serving as a beacon of aspiration and inspiration. They established an elder council, ensuring every voice was considered. Every decision reached with the pack's best interests as the guiding principle. They cultivated a culture of inclusivity, welcoming rogues and outcasts into their community, providing them with an opportunity to belong, to contribute, to discover purpose. Under their stewardship, the Silver Moon Pack became a haven, a refuge where wolves of all walks of life could find sanctuary, could find affection, and could discover their rightful place. And as they stood united, side by side, beneath the ever-watchful moon, they knew their legacy would endure, a legacy of love, of service, and of the indomitable spirit of the wolf.